Scientists tried to hide the truth about this three-fingered mummy. There are ancient secrets that the deeper modern humans dig, the more terrified they become. There are mummies that appear completely ordinary, yet once shocked the entire world because their body structures were entirely unlike those of humans. There are tombs nearly 30,000 years old that seem to have decayed away with time, only to reveal the remains of a child who was a hybrid between two ancient human species, a discovery that shook the foundations of history. And then there are skeletons with nails driven through their chests, with no one knowing the reason why. All of these remain mysteries that science has still not been able to fully explain to this day. So in the end, do you think human history may be hiding truths that we were never meant to know? Hello everyone, and welcome back to Ancient History, the channel where we explore some of the strangest archaeological mysteries ever buried beneath thousands of years of dust and time. From the mysterious pyramids of Egypt and cursed ancient tombs to lost cities and skeletal remains that have sparked decades of scientific debate, all of it suggests that human history may be far more complex and terrifying than anything we were ever taught in books. And in today's video, we're going to dive into a series of archaeological discoveries that shocked the course of history itself. Discoveries that left the entire world stunned by how mysterious they were. And among all of them, perhaps the most extraordinary is the story of the three-fingered mummies discovered in southern Peru in 2017. What is the story behind these mummies? What secrets do they hide that shock the world? And are there even more mysterious and disturbing archaeological discoveries beyond them? Join me in today's video right now to uncover the answers. The chilling mystery of the three-fingered mummies in Peru. Alien remains or a species far more advanced than humanity? Do you believe that at some point in Earth's history, there may have existed a species that looked human yet was not entirely human? A being with an unnaturally elongated skull, hands with only 3 fingers, and a body structure so bizarre that even modern scientists have argued about it for years. And what makes this even more terrifying is that these mummies did not come from legends or science fiction movies. They were discovered in real life in Peru, the South American country famous for countless unsolved archaeological mysteries. The story began in early 2017, when researchers uncovered a series of strange mummies deep beneath the ground inside an ancient burial site in southern Peru. From the very moment they were brought into the light, these remains shocked the entire world, not because they were preserved in an unnervingly perfect condition, but because their appearance was completely unlike that of ordinary humans. Among them was the most famous mummy of all, named Maria, later identified as a woman who had lived around the 5th century BC. Do you know why this mummy was considered the most extraordinary? Because while normal humans like us have 5 fingers and 5 toes, Maria's hands and feet each had only 3 fingers and 3 toes, and they were unusually long. That detail alone was enough to send chills down anyone's spine. But that was not the only shocking discovery. Inside the same tomb, researchers also found the mummy of a baby girl around 9 months old, named Vavita. In addition, Peru allowed Russian experts to examine 4 other male mummies standing only about 28 inches tall, with estimated ages ranging from 4,000 to as much as 6,500 years old. Just hearing that is enough to make it clear that this story is far from ordinary, isn't it? What made the case even more mysterious was that the initial examinations suggested these mummies genuinely possessed human characteristics. They had heads, eyes, mouths, arms, and legs, just like us. Analyses of muscle tissue, chemical structure, and DNA produced astonishing results. Maria and the other mummies possessed 23 pairs of chromosomes, exactly like modern humans today. Even their amino acid sequences showed almost no differences. Yet some aspects of their skeletal structure were drastically different from ours. For example, their skulls extended abnormally far backward, resembling the ancient depictions of extraterrestrials often seen in movies. Their lower jawbones appeared almost fused to the skull, making movement impossible in the same way humans normally can. And most striking of all, every one of them had only 3 fingers and 3 toes. From these details, experts argued that this was no ordinary deformity. The bone structure suggested they developed naturally from birth, rather than being altered, amputated, or deformed after death. And that is precisely what led some researchers to propose extremely controversial theories. According to one genetics research group in St. Petersburg, Russia, these mummies might not belong to the human species as we know it. Meanwhile, Professor Konstantin Korotkov of the Russian National Research University made statements that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. He claimed that they look human but are not entirely human. According to him, Maria and Vavita could represent a species that had reached a level of development far beyond modern humanity, perhaps thousands of years ahead of us. And the most disturbing possibility raised was that they could be connected to extraterrestrials or some form of ancient biological robots. Sounds like science fiction, doesn't it? But what makes the story even stranger is that all of this happened near one of the world's most mysterious locations, the Nazca Lines of Peru. This is the site of gigantic drawings stretching across the ground, visible in their full form only from high above the sky. There are animal figures, enormous straight lines extending for miles, and most notably, a giant humanoid figure standing about 131 feet tall with an extremely unusual appearance. From all these details, many people believe the Nazca Lines may have been some kind of message to the sky, or perhaps even signs of communication with beings beyond Earth. The strange object hidden inside an Egyptian mummy for thousands of years left the entire archaeological world stunned. What would you think if I told you that inside the body of an ancient Egyptian mummy, a secret was hidden unlike anything ever discovered in the history of archaeology? This secret had nothing to do with gold, precious jewels, or magical curses like most people would imagine. Instead, it was connected to a famous ancient text that once helped shape the entire civilization of Greece. And the terrifying part is that this object remained hidden inside the stomach of a dead man for nearly 2,000 years without anyone ever knowing. Hard to believe, right? But this is a completely real story that archaeologists have only recently uncovered. Yes, this strange story began in Oxyrhynchus, an ancient cemetery located in the town of Al-Banasa in Egypt's Minya province. This site has long been considered one of the country's most important archaeological locations, where thousands of ancient manuscripts and countless mysterious mummies have already been discovered. But during excavations carried out in November and December of 2025, archaeologists uncovered something that left the entire research team speechless. While examining the mummy of a man buried during the period when Egypt was under Roman rule, experts unexpectedly discovered a papyrus scroll hidden inside the abdominal area of the body. At first, that might not sound too unusual, since ancient Egyptians were known to place papyrus documents inside the bodies of the dead. But what shocked everyone was the text written on that scroll. It was not a spell, not a magical ritual, not a prayer for the afterlife. Instead, it was part of the Iliad, the legendary epic written by Homer, one of the greatest poets of ancient Greece. A literary work approximately 2,700 to 2,800 years old, telling the story of the famous Trojan War from Greek mythology, had somehow ended up inside the stomach of an Egyptian mummy. That fact alone was enough to spark intense debate throughout the archaeological world. According to the research team led by the University of Barcelona, the discovered text belonged to Book 2 of the Iliad, the section listing the ships used to attack the city of Troy during the legendary war. What made this discovery even stranger was that the scroll was not buried beside the mummy like a normal funerary object. Instead, it had been deliberately placed directly inside the corpse during the mummification process. In other words, thousands of years ago, someone intentionally inserted this famous literary work into the man's body before he was buried. And this is where the story becomes even more chilling. According to lead archaeologist Esther Ponce Melado, the people performing the burial ritual may have believed that the scroll would protect the deceased in the afterlife. The custom of placing papyrus inside mummies had actually been documented before. However, most papyrus texts found inside the chest or abdomen of mummies usually contained magical writings, spells, or prayers intended to guide the soul of the dead. But this time, it was the Iliad, a Greek literary masterpiece rather than an Egyptian sacred text. That detail has left scientists deeply confused, because until now, this is the first time in the history of archaeology that the Iliad has ever been discovered inside an ancient Egyptian mummy. and no one knows exactly why ancient people believed this text could protect a soul after death. Did they consider the Iliad to be a sacred document, or was there once an ancient religious belief tied to it that has been lost for thousands of years? What makes the mystery even deeper is that the identity of this mummy remains completely unknown. So far, examinations have only confirmed that the man lived during the period of Roman rule in Egypt from 30 BC after the death of Cleopatra until AD 641 when the Rashidun Caliphate took control of Egypt. Beyond that, everything remains a mystery. The more researchers investigate, the more this story feels like a suspense film rather than a normal archaeological discovery. But it seems that Oxyrhynchus still has no intention of revealing all its secrets. Because in earlier excavations at the very same site, scientists had already discovered more than 10 mummies with golden tongues. Ancient Egyptians believed these golden tongues would allow the dead to communicate with the gods and speak in the afterlife. Just hearing that alone is enough to send chills down your spine, isn't it? So now let's try to connect all these pieces together. An unidentified mummy, a Greek epic hidden inside the stomach of the dead, strange rituals connected to the afterlife, and an ancient Egyptian cemetery that continues producing discoveries far beyond the understanding of modern humans. Could all of this be suggesting one terrifying possibility? That ancient people may have understood far more about death than we do today? Two skeletons embraced for 800 years inside an ancient church in Poland. Inside a centuries-old church in Europe, archaeologists unexpectedly uncovered a mysterious grave. Why do I call it mysterious? Because inside were not one, but two skeletons lying closely together as if they had never wanted to be apart. One was buried according to traditional medieval burial customs, while the other was positioned on its side, embracing the other person as though trying to protect them even after death. Just witnessing that scene alone was enough to leave the entire excavation team speechless. And what makes it even more fascinating is that to this day, the mystery behind these two skeletons remains unsolved. The story begins in the city of Opole, in the country of Poland, Europe. There stands a famous religious structure known as the Cathedral of the Exaltation of the Holy Cross, an ancient church built in the 13th century. During archaeological excavations within the church grounds, experts discovered a double grave believed to be around 800 years old. But the moment the final layer of soil was cleared away, everyone realized this was no ordinary burial. The two skeletons were positioned extremely close together, as though they had never wanted to leave one another's side, even in the afterlife. One of them had been buried according to common medieval Christian traditions, lying flat on the back with both arms resting alongside the body. But the other skeleton was completely different. This individual was lying on one side, with one arm placed beneath the other person's head, creating the impression of someone lovingly holding the person beside them. Archaeologists believe the two were buried at the same time, rather than being placed in the grave during separate periods. And honestly, that posture alone is enough to make anyone feel that there must have been something deeply special between these two people. At first, many believed this could have been a married couple from the Middle Ages. After all, double burials are not uncommon throughout the world. In archaeological history, many couples have been buried side by side as symbols of love and connection beyond death. But then the DNA analysis completely shattered every original theory. Both skeletons belonged to women. Not only that, but they were not biologically related either. This discovery immediately raised countless questions that left researchers puzzled for years. Biological anthropologist Agata Cieślik from Poland's Ludwig Hirschfeld Institute of Immunology and Experimental Therapy stated that finding such an unusual burial arrangement in a sacred setting drew significant attention from scientists. According to her, the way the two women were positioned beside each other strongly suggests they shared an extraordinarily special bond. But what kind of relationship was it? That is what makes this story so mysterious. One theory quickly emerged, suggesting they may have been secret lovers. However, the location of the grave itself makes that theory seem almost impossible. The double burial was placed directly beside the church wall, an extremely sacred and honorable location in medieval Christian culture. You have to remember that during that era, same-sex relationships were considered grave sins. Medieval European laws and religious beliefs harshly condemned such relationships, and many people were even executed if discovered. Because of that, if these two women truly had been lovers, it is almost certain they would never have been granted burial in such a prestigious location beside an ancient church. And that only makes the mystery even harder to understand. If they were not relatives, not sisters, and not husband and wife, then why were they buried together in such an emotional and intimate way? Some believe they may have been close friends, caretakers, or people who endured a terrible tragedy together during their lives. Another theory suggests that one of them may have sacrificed herself to protect the other during a plague outbreak or a time of war. But as of today, all of these ideas remain nothing more than speculation. 78 skeletons reveal a brutal sacrificial ritual in ancient Korea. Have you ever wondered, behind the ancient beauty of old Asian dynasties, were there dark secrets that history never fully revealed? A ritual that forced entire families to die alongside their master, children buried alive together with their parents, and twisted bloodline relationships that continued through generations within the royal family. It all sounds like something out of a historical horror movie, doesn't it? But the terrifying part is that all of these stories have just been uncovered from real human skeletons excavated in South Korea. The story begins in Gyeongsan, a city located in southeastern South Korea in North Gyeongsang Province. This area lies near Gyeongju, the famous ancient capital of the Silla Kingdom, and it was here, within the ancient Imdang Joyeong burial complex, that scientists discovered dozens of tombs dating from the 4th to the 6th century AD during Korea's Three Kingdoms period. To help you picture it more clearly, at that time the Korean peninsula had not yet been unified as it is today. Instead, it was divided into three major kingdoms: Goguryeo, Baekje, and Silla. Among them, Silla was the kingdom that survived the longest and eventually unified nearly the entire Korean peninsula. But behind that glory may have existed a far more terrifying society than we ever imagined. According to a study recently published in the scientific journal Science Advances, a team of Korean and German researchers led by Seoul National University conducted DNA analysis on 78 skeletons discovered at the Imdang Joyeong Cemetery. And the deeper they went into the results, the more horrifying the discoveries became. First, the genetic data showed that many of the individuals buried there were closely related by blood. Specifically, researchers identified 11 first-degree relative pairs, such as parents and children or biological siblings, along with 23 second-degree relative pairs, including grandparents and grandchildren or aunts and nieces. This proves that ancient Silla people tended to bury family members close together after death. But that was only the surface. The truly horrifying part is that there were at least 3 cases in which parents and children appeared to have been buried at the same time. After comparing the findings with ancient historical records, scientists realized these may be traces of an ancient sacrificial ritual known as sunjang. In simple terms, when a powerful person died, close servants or attendants could be killed and buried alongside them in order to continue serving them in the afterlife. More than 1,500 years ago, entire families may have been sent into the grave simply because their master had died. And even more disturbing, this ritual was not limited to the lower classes. Archaeological evidence suggests that both royal family members and commoners were connected to these sacrificial practices. The burial arrangements within the cemetery also revealed an extremely clear class hierarchy in Silla society. Elite tomb owners were usually buried separately in large and elaborate graves. Meanwhile, servants or sacrificial victims were sometimes buried together like living grave goods. Just hearing that is enough to send chills down your spine, isn't it? But the scientists did not stop there. Using DNA data, the research team reconstructed 13 family trees spanning more than a century across 2 separate burial sites. And from this, they uncovered another disturbing secret of the Silla Kingdom: an extremely high rate of inbreeding. That means marriages between blood relatives occurred frequently in this ancient society, especially among powerful family lines. According to many researchers, these marriages within the family may have been intended to preserve noble bloodlines and strengthen family power, but the consequences made the social structure increasingly distorted and closed off. Another remarkable detail is that many of the reconstructed family trees were centered around maternal lineage. This suggests that maternal bloodlines may have played a far more important role in Silla society than historical records previously indicated. You see, from just 78 skeletons lying silently beneath the earth for thousands of years, an entire dark picture of ancient society has slowly emerged. A kingdom once praised for its brilliant culture and powerful rule may also have hidden brutal sacrificial rituals, inbred royal bloodlines, and a rigid class system that tightly bound human destiny to family lineage. Because of that, this research not only confirms the accuracy of historical records about Scylla, but also helps scientists better understand how status, power, and even death were once controlled by bloodline laws in ancient Korean society. As frightening as these discoveries may be, they are also undeniably fascinating, aren't they? The massive pink stone door hiding an Egyptian prince's tomb. Inside was a 4,500-year-old treasure that stunned archaeologists. What if I told you that deep within Egypt's vast desert, a land that has buried countless secrets for thousands of years, archaeologists have just uncovered a lost royal tomb featuring a gigantic pink stone door unlike anything ever seen before? A door nearly as tall as a two-story building, completely covered in ancient hieroglyphs, stood silently in the middle of the ancient Saqqara necropolis as if it were hiding something incredibly important behind it. Would you believe it? If not, then come with me to Saqqara, the famous ancient burial ground located about 25 miles southwest of Cairo, Egypt. Because it was here that archaeologists recently revealed exactly such a discovery. As many of you may know, Saqqara was once the most important royal cemetery of Memphis, the capital of Egypt during the Old Kingdom. For thousands of years, this sacred site served as the final resting place of pharaohs, princes, nobles, and some of the most powerful officials in ancient Egyptian history. Recently, during an excavation conducted by Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities in collaboration with the Zahi Hawass Foundation for Archaeology and Heritage, archaeologists uncovered an extraordinary royal tomb. Initial analysis suggests the tomb belonged to Prince Wazir-Ifreh, the son of Pharaoh Userkaf, the founder of Egypt's 5th dynasty, who ruled the country from approximately 2498 to 2491 BC. That means this tomb had remained buried beneath Egypt's scorching sands for nearly 4,500 years. But what shocked experts the most was not the tomb's age. It was the enormous pink granite door standing at its entrance. The massive structure measured nearly 15 feet tall and more than 3 feet wide, carved entirely from rare pink granite. Even transporting such an enormous stone block thousands of years ago would have seemed almost impossible. Yet strangely, this was only a false door, a type of architectural feature commonly found in ancient Egyptian tombs, believed to serve as a spiritual gateway for the soul of the deceased. Across the surface of the door, archaeologists discovered beautifully carved hieroglyphic inscriptions. The writings revealed several titles held by Prince Wazir-Ifreh, including Hereditary Prince, Governor of Buto and Nekheb, and Royal Scribe. Just from those titles alone, it is clear that he was an extremely powerful figure within the royal court of ancient Egypt. But the secrets hidden deeper inside the tomb were even more astonishing. On the eastern facade, the excavation team uncovered another granite entrance engraved with the name of Prince Wazir-Ifreh, alongside images of Pharaoh Nefertari, the third king of the 5th dynasty. This suggests the tomb was connected not only to a royal family member, but also to an entire era of political power in ancient Egypt. As archaeologists ventured farther inside, they discovered a total of 13 pink granite statues seated on high-backed chairs, as if they had been silently guarding the tomb for thousands of years. Some of the human-headed statues are believed to represent the wives of Prince Wazir-Ifreh. In addition, researchers found 2 headless statues and a black granite statue that had toppled onto its side, creating an atmosphere that felt both mysterious and deeply unsettling within the ancient burial chamber. And the discoveries did not stop there. The expedition also uncovered a red granite offering table engraved with a detailed list of ritual items used in ancient ceremonies. Most remarkable of all was a black granite statue standing about 3.8 feet tall, depicting a man in an upright pose. After further analysis, experts determined that this statue actually belonged to Egypt's 26th dynasty, meaning it was created much later than the time of Prince Wazir-Ifreh. That discovery led researchers to a fascinating theory. The The tomb may have been reopened and reused multiple times throughout ancient Egyptian history. Just think about that for a moment. A tomb that survived for more than 4 millennia, passing through multiple dynasties, may have witnessed countless secrets that modern humanity still cannot fully understand. But perhaps the most surprising discovery was yet to come. Inside the tomb, archaeologists also found a group of statues depicting Pharaoh Djoser, his queen, and their 10 daughters. If you have ever explored the mysteries of ancient Egypt, then the name Djoser is probably already familiar to you. Djoser was the famous pharaoh who ruled Egypt around the 27th century BC during the 3rd dynasty, and he is best known as the ruler who commissioned the world's very first step pyramid. Preliminary analysis suggests these statues were originally placed in a chamber near Djoser's step pyramid, before later being moved to the tomb of Prince Wazir-If-Rey in Saqqara. And that raises a series of new questions. Who moved those statues? Why did they end up inside the tomb of a prince from a completely different dynasty? And beneath the still unexcavated chambers of Saqqara, how many more secrets are waiting to be discovered? Because in ancient Egypt, every door that is opened seems to reveal an even greater mystery hidden behind it. Unfortunately, to this day, those questions remain buried in darkness, and no one truly has the answers yet. The lost palace of Genghis Khan's grandson reveals an 800-year-old secret of the Mongol Empire. Have you ever imagined that hidden among the cold and desolate plains of eastern Turkey, a place where almost no traces of the past seem to remain today, there once stood a massive palace belonging to a direct descendant of Genghis Khan? A mysterious summer palace that once served as the resting place of one of the most powerful Khans of the Mongol Empire, only to vanish from history for hundreds of years as if it had never existed. And what is truly astonishing is that after centuries of surviving only in vague ancient texts, that palace has finally begun to reappear from beneath the earth. Sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But fascinatingly, it is completely real, and it is happening in the Taldaran Plain of eastern Turkey, the nation that sits between Asia and Europe and once served as a crossroads for countless ancient civilizations. For many years, historians believe that somewhere within this region, there once existed a palace that also functioned as the summer capital of Hulagu Khan, the famous grandson of Genghis Khan. If you are unfamiliar with him, Hulagu Khan was one of the most powerful rulers during the height of the Mongol Empire. He ruled from 1256 to 1265 as a Mongol Khan and was also the founder of the Ilkhanate, a vast empire formed from territories conquered by the Mongols, stretching across present-day Iraq, Tajikistan, Turkey, and even Pakistan. But for centuries, although many ancient records mentioned Hulagu Khan's summer palace, no one knew exactly where it was located. That was until a team of 8 experts from Turkey and Mongolia launched a major survey in the Taldaran Plain. The research was led by Professor Erzal, head of the Turkish Islamic Archaeology Department at Izmir Katip Çelebi University. At first, the team only hoped to uncover a few small traces that could confirm what history had recorded. But then the clues began appearing in ways nobody expected. During a survey conducted last month, the researchers discovered an ancient pottery kiln along with numerous ceramic fragments dating back to the Ilkhanate period, the very dynasty founded by Hulagu Khan after the Mongol conquests. To us, that may not sound extraordinary, but to archaeologists, it was like finding the first missing piece of a massive secret. Because wherever large-scale pottery kilns existed, there was usually once a densely populated settlement or an important center of power nearby. Things became even more exciting when the team continued uncovering caravanserais, ancient roadside inns commonly built along major trade routes to serve merchants and traveling caravans. Hundreds of years ago, groups of traders riding horses and camels may have passed through this very land, stopping to rest before entering the political center of Mongol power. All of these discoveries seem to guide archaeologists toward one unavoidable conclusion. They were standing extremely close to the lost palace of Hulagu Khan, and indeed, the most important moment finally arrived. After several more days of excavation, the team uncovered additional ancient ruins that had suffered extremely severe destruction. Although most of the structure had been reduced to rubble, experts believe these remains are the surviving traces of the legendary summer palace described in historical records. What strengthened their confidence even further was the number of valuable artifacts found at the site. Among the ruins, archaeologists recovered large quantities of ancient roof tiles, glazed bricks, pottery, and especially finely crafted tricolored glazed porcelain fragments. These materials were commonly used in royal buildings or structures built for powerful elites during the Middle Ages. Even though the palace itself had nearly been erased by time, the remaining pottery shards and bricks still quietly tell the story of an empire that once made the entire world tremble in fear. 3 ancient tombs sealed with iron nails to stop the dead from returning beneath the soil of Rome. My friends, what do you think ancient people feared most after death? Was it a soul unable to move on, or the terrifying idea that the dead themselves could return from the underworld? For the ancient Romans, they truly believed it could happen. They believed the dead might come back from beyond the grave seeking revenge. And evidence of that belief was uncovered recently when workers preparing to build a new student dormitory in southern Rome unexpectedly discovered an entire ancient cemetery buried for nearly 2,000 years. But the most chilling part was not the skeletons or the ancient graves themselves. It was the object placed directly on the chests of the dead: 3 iron nails. According to ancient Roman beliefs, these nails were used to prevent the dead from rising again. The story began along Via Ostiense, near the famous Basilica of St. Paul, outside the walls in Rome, the capital of Italy. Before construction on the new dormitory could begin, Italy's Ministry of Culture ordered a preventive archaeological excavation to examine the land beneath the site. No one could have imagined that this survey would uncover an entirely unknown section of the ancient Ostiense necropolis, a cemetery archaeologists had already been studying since 1919. During the excavation, archaeologists discovered 3 ancient tombs dating back approximately 1,800 years. Inside each tomb was a skeleton buried in an incredibly strange manner. Resting silently on the chest of each deceased person was an iron nail that had remained untouched for nearly 2 millennia. Just think about that for a moment. Nearly 2,000 years ago, what were people so terrified of that they felt the need to nail down the dead before burying them? According to archaeologist Daletta Menghinello from the Special Superintendency of Rome under Italy's Ministry of Culture, this was actually part of a burial ritual practiced during ancient Roman times and continued through later periods as well. People believed iron nails had the power to lock the soul of the deceased in place, preventing them from returning as vampires or other dangerous supernatural entities. Sounds like mythology, doesn't it? But the frightening reality is that these rituals truly existed in history. This discovery shows that the ancient Romans did not simply believe in the afterlife, they also carried a deep fear that the dead could return to haunt the living. And perhaps because of that fear, they created all kinds of rituals meant to restrain the body before burial. But these 3 graves containing such strange objects were only a small part of the shocking discoveries beneath the ground of Rome. According to Heritage Daily, archaeologists went on to uncover many more tombs from the same era as well as from later periods. Several of the graves were exceptionally well preserved, providing experts with valuable clues about ancient Roman burial customs and spiritual beliefs. Not long afterward, the research team also excavated a cluster of 5 large funerary structures dating back to the Roman Empire, located about 3 feet beneath the surface. These structures were built in quadrangular shapes with ancient vaulted roofs and arranged along a northeast to southwest axis, resembling a carefully planned cemetery complex from thousands of years ago. In front of these larger structures stood 2 smaller funerary buildings, along with another similar structure built perpendicular to them, forming a burial complex far larger than researchers had originally imagined. Isn't it incredible? A place where students today may one day study, live, and spend their daily lives was once a literal city of the dead during ancient Roman times. But the mystery does not end there. Near the burial area, researchers also discovered a semicircular hall and a large brick-built chamber containing clear traces of ancient mosaic flooring. To this day, the true purpose of these structures remains unknown. They may once have served as locations for funeral ceremonies, religious gatherings, or spiritual rituals connected to the Roman dead. And the deeper archaeologists excavated, the more they realized the astonishing scale of the ancient Ostiense cemetery. The 28,000-year-old tomb of a child hybrid between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, a discovery that could rewrite human history. What would happen if everything we thought we knew about the extinction of the Neanderthals was not entirely correct? For decades, scientists believed that Neanderthals disappeared from Earth around 40,000 years ago. But in 1998, in Portugal's Lapido Valley, a region in southwestern Europe, the excavation of an ancient grave sparked intense debate about the history of human evolution. Inside that grave was the skeleton of a child with features that did not belong entirely to any single human species. It had the chin of a Homo sapiens, but the legs of a Neanderthal. And the latest findings show that this child was buried approximately 28,000 years ago, thousands of years later than the accepted timeline for Neanderthal extinction. Just think about that for a moment. Wouldn't that force humanity's entire evolutionary timeline to be rewritten? The story began in 1998, when archaeologists started excavations in the Lapido Valley, one of Portugal's most famous prehistoric archaeological sites. At first, researchers believed it was simply an ordinary prehistoric location, but the moment the first skeleton emerged from the ancient red soil, experts realized they were standing before something extraordinarily unusual. It was the skeleton of a child. What shocked scientists around the world was that the child's body appeared to contain characteristics from two different human species. The prominent chin closely resembled that of Homo sapiens, modern humans like us today. But the legs were short, thick, and powerfully built in the distinctive style associated with Neanderthals, the ancient human species that once lived across Ice Age Europe. The skeleton also displayed several other mixed anatomical traits from both species, making it nearly impossible for researchers to ignore the most astonishing theory of all. This child may have been a hybrid. And as you probably know, back in the late 1990s, the idea that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals could have children together was still highly controversial. But years later, as ancient DNA sequencing technology advanced dramatically, scientists finally confirmed that the seemingly impossible was true. The Lapido child really was the result of interbreeding between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. This showed that our ancestors did not merely encounter other ancient human species, they also mixed genetically with them for thousands of years. But then an even greater mystery emerged. One of the biggest challenges in studying ancient burial sites is determining the true age of human remains. After tens of thousands of years underground, bones often become contaminated by surrounding environmental materials, making traditional dating methods unreliable. For years, researchers attempted 4 separate times to date the Lapido child, using conventional radiocarbon analysis. However, the results were never precise enough to reach a final conclusion. That changed recently when scientists applied a modern technique known as compound-specific radiocarbon analysis, or CSRA, and the final results stunned the archaeological world. According to the new study, the grave of the Lapido child dates back approximately 28,000 years, thousands of years older than previous estimates had suggested. At first glance, that may sound like just a number, but for human history, it was like a bombshell. Because if Neanderthals supposedly became extinct around 40,000 years ago, then why was a child carrying Neanderthal ancestry still appearing 28,000 years ago? That question has led many scientists to propose that Neanderthals may have survived much longer than history once believed. Or at the very least, their bloodline may have continued through generations of hybrid offspring with Homo sapiens. In other words, the disappearance of the Neanderthals may not have been sudden at all. But perhaps the strangest mystery lies within the burial site itself. According to researchers, after the Lapido child was buried, the surrounding area appears to have been abandoned for nearly 2,000 years. There is no evidence of hunting, settlement, or regular human activity there for a very long time afterward. Researcher João Zilom from the University of Barcelona in Spain believes the child's death may have turned the area into forbidden ground for the ancient community living there at the time. Perhaps they believed the child was special in some way. Or perhaps the existence of an individual carrying the blood of 2 different human species filled people with fear. Tens of thousands of years ago, during an era when humans survived through hunting and gathering, the appearance of a child who did not completely resemble anyone else may have been viewed as something mysterious and beyond human understanding. And even today, The ancient grave in Portugal's Lapedo Valley remains one of the most controversial discoveries in the history of archaeology. That is why archaeologists often say, the deeper humanity digs into the past, the more we realize that the true story of our origins may be far more complicated and far stranger than history has ever told us. My friends, after everything we have just explored, perhaps the most terrifying thing is not the three-fingered mummies, the mysterious ancient tombs, or the strange skeletons discovered beneath the earth, but the fact that modern humanity still does not fully understand its own past. Every archaeological discovery is like a missing piece of history, and the deeper we dig, the more unanswered questions appear. Did those ancient species truly disappear? Or are there still buried secrets that science is not yet ready to confirm? What do you think the answer is? And do you believe that right beneath our feet, there could still be hidden ruins capable of completely changing the way humanity understands world history? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, if you love ancient mysteries and world-shocking discoveries, don't forget to follow the Ancient History channel by subscribing and turning on the notification bell so we can continue uncovering mysteries that have never been solved in the videos ahead. And for now, goodbye and see you next time.